Social justice warrior.
It's a term with a lot of ideological baggage. Lots of you have probably already formed some kind of vague prejudgment of me just from hearing me say those words. They're a little tendentious. Political labels tend to be divisive by their nature, but this one is especially bad for some reason. And honestly, I cringe a little bit when I say social justice warrior. You know, it's such a cliche now, it's almost like the word epic.
That was epic.
Yes,
that was epic for the win.
Every time I say it, it just feels like there's a little bird pooping into my mouth. Epic. But despite how worn out and often misused the term social justice warrior is, beyond the cliches and the arguing and all that other stuff, there is a distinct subculture, a very real thing that this label describes. And it is a spicy meatball. It's definitely something worth talking about. And that's what we're going to be doing today, right here, right now. I should say before I start that this isn't really going to be me being like, welcome to the anti-PC zone, bitches. Checkmate, atheists. I'm not here to lay the rhetorical smackdown. I'm more interested in just figuring out what it is that makes these people tick. Who are they? What do they want? Why do they want it? And hopefully we'll all walk away a little bit smarter. As you all know, I am an official certified armchair psychologist. So here I am once again to provide my expert internet diagnosis. Also, a lot of pointless bloviating. So, away we go. Part 1. What is a social justice warrior? So, what is a social justice warrior? Now, maybe you already have some vague associations. You might be familiar with things like Cancel Colbert, or Donglegate, or just general craziness on Tumblr and Twitter. But what is a social justice warrior? Well, I have thought about this a lot, like way more than anybody ever should think about this. And it's surprisingly tricky trying to figure out where exactly to pull the thread. So I am going to try and just break this down as simply and crisply and cleanly as I can. So here we go. Now, let's begin by looking at the traditional left-right political spectrum. At the most basic level, left-wingers tend to think in terms of oppressors versus the oppressed, while right-wingers tend to think in terms of order versus chaos, or civilization versus barbarism. The left sees hierarchies as oppressive, while the right defends them as either just or inevitable. Most people use some mix of left and right thinking, and there's plenty of stuff that doesn't really fit one or the other, but very generally this is how it tends to work. And the more that one of these two paradigms tends to dominate your thinking, the further toward either extreme you are going to find yourself. Social justice warriors build narratives heavily focused around social power and how that power is exercised. Power is oppressive, people with less power are victims. This is the lens through which they view pretty much every aspect of politics and culture. Obviously, that puts them on the very far left. But being on the far left doesn't necessarily make you a social justice warrior. So what are we missing? Well, for one thing, when social justice warriors talk about power, they typically delineate along lines of identity groups, things like race or gender. This stands in contrast to other camps on the far left like Marxists, who think more in terms of economic class, or anarchists who focus on the oppressive qualities of state institutions. So, to recap, social justice warriors are 1. Far left, 2. Invested mainly in identity politics. However, there's still something missing here. In my opinion, in my expert internet doctor opinion, this list doesn't capture what being a social justice warrior is really about. I've met people who meet these two criteria who, as far as I'm concerned, were not really social justice warriors. There's a key element that's missing here, and I think I know what it is. And this is where we're going to get out into the weeds a little bit. Stick with me. I know this is boring. I'm just going to do this. Okay, so there's a metric used in some psychology research that's called integrative complexity. Okay? Integrative complexity. Okay, you writing this down? Okay, good. So, integrative complexity. What this basically is a measure of to what degree your thinking factors in alternate perspectives and possibilities. If you see multiple ways of looking at a problem and you look for ways to sort of draw them together, then that means you're using a more integratively complex thinking style. On the flip side of that, if you tend to stick to your guns and refuse to consider alternatives, that's low integrative complexity. In the context of politics, an integratively complex thinker sees shades of gray and acknowledges other viewpoints and moral values, while an integratively simple thinker sees in black and white and dismisses other viewpoints as stupid, evil, or illegitimate. Now, this doesn't mean that an integratively complex thinker can't have opinions. It's not like, oh, everybody's right, let's all join hands and dance around the maypole. It's just a question of being able to tell the difference between the world as it is and the world according to your values. There's a guy at UPenn who's done a lot of research into this, and he wrote a book that I really, really like. It's called Expert Political Judgment. And this is where everyone who knows me in real life is going to roll their eyes, because I literally fucking never shut up about this book. But just check it out if this kind of thing interests you, because it's really good. Anyway, I think what really defines a social justice warrior is a profound lack of integrative complexity. You see this at pretty much every level of their ideology. They have, like, these entire rhetorical tools that revolve around shutting out ideas that make them uncomfortable. There's even the old cliche that's like, it's not my job to educate you, where it's like, not only is it a foregone conclusion that I'm right and you're wrong, I'm not even going to waste my time talking to you about this. Now, I go through this whole song and dance of left, right, these issues, those issues, blah, 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 because I just think it's important that we all know exactly what this is and also what it is not. So, yeah.
Checkmate, atheists.
Part 2. Social justice at his computer. So this is something I talked about a little bit in my video about 4chan. I pointed out as a positive aspect of Tumblr the fact that you can basically tailor your content feed to only ever show stuff you want to see. That's pretty much true for most popular social media sites, I think. Facebook, I think, even does that for you a little bit without even telling you. Now, that's cool and convenient if we're talking about casual correspondence or art or music or pictures of Mario fucking Yoshi up the butt, but we run up against an obvious problem when news and politics get involved. See, whenever someone posts something that makes you uncomfortable or challenges your assumptions, it's real easy to just be like, click, and make that person disappear forever. And over time, what this can lead to is you mostly only seeing stuff that reinforces your existing preconceptions about the world. And I mean, it's one thing when you're in a traditional echo chamber where you're in a big circle jerk with a group of like-minded people on a forum or something, but social media take it to a whole new level by producing streams of content aggregated specifically for you and no one else. It's an echo chamber of one. This impacts actual discussions too. Like, for example, when I'm on Tumblr, right, it's not uncommon to see a popular post that is just total bullshit. Not exaggerated or polemical, but just totally and completely pulled out of someone's butthole. Like someone literally got on their computer and said, okay, time to make some shit up. Now, I could reblog it and be like, that's not true, here's the Snopes page that I found after going on Google for 2 seconds, but nobody's going to see that aside from the 200 or so people who follow me, and most of them probably don't need me to point it out anyway. Most of the people who actually believe the post are just going to continue believing it, and the misinformation is just going to keep on spreading. It's like that with everything. Say someone you follow throws up some opinionated blog post that you happen to agree with. There's a good chance that someone else might write a thoughtful response that would give you pause and make you see the issue in a different light. But unless you go digging through the notes, odds are you're not going to see it. All you see is this one single perspective. In order to get exposed to new ideas, it's on you to keep track of people who don't share your worldview. Most people probably aren't going to put in that effort. Now, what this can ultimately lead to is a near constant experience of having your viewpoint repeated back to you over and over again. Every time you log on and check Facebook or Reddit or Tumblr or Twitter, you get that little shot of dopamine, like, oh yeah, I'm so righteous. Everything I believe is so moral and correct. And there's hardly ever anything to put that in check. And as time goes on, what I think can happen for a lot of people is things start to just sort of seem more clear and simple. Shades of gray start to fade away into black or white extremes. And you start to change. You start to grow not just opinionated, but arrogant and antagonistic. In politics, I think there's a threshold beyond which your conscience falls by the wayside and ego takes over. And It's this type of stuff that I think can really push a person over that edge. You know, I really like the internet, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's too outlandish to think that it's probably had some hand in making people more polarized politically. This is part of what I mean when I talk about a parochial mindset. Because of the constantly increasing ease with which we are able to connect with like-minded people, we're getting caught up in the norms and ideas of smaller and smaller and more finely differentiated social clusters. It's parochialism on a global scale. And also, this is actually kind of a side note to what I'm saying, but what's interesting is it's not just on the internet either. You can see it in the old media and even to some degree in real life. More and more people are actually clustering together by ideology geographically, even at the scale of neighborhoods. There's a pretty good book about this I read a few years ago called The Big Sort. So I guess go ahead and add that to your reading list. The Big Sort by Bill Bishop. Anyway, let's be moving along here. This video is fucking never gonna end at this rate. Part 3. What is it? Feminist. So, Kill la Kill. Pretty fun show. Kinda disappointing second half, maybe, but overall pretty good. I remember when the show first started airing, there were a lot of people who were like, "Oh my god, Kill la Kill's so good because it's like about body positivity. It's just like it's about like breaking free from the male gaze." Like, oh my god, and I'm like, I don't think so, but okay. And then there were all these other people who were like, "Oh no, this show's misogynist because objectification, and you know, because God forbid a fucking anime has boobs in it." And then there were all these people arguing and judging the show on the basis of whether it's feminist or misogynist or whatever. Never mind whether or not like the show is fun to watch, or it has good action, or it has cool characters who you can relate to, or tells a good story you can get emotionally invested in. Instead, there's this big debate about whether or not the show meets some kind of ideological benchmark. Now, maybe I'm just totally fucking stupid, but I don't understand shit like this at all. And I'm not just talking about Kill la Kill, like, I see stuff like this all the time. People seem to really, really like creatively interpreting pop culture through the lens of identity politics. The thing is, though, when you get into these kinds of discussions, what you're dealing with a lot of incredibly abstract and poorly defined questions. Is Kill la Kill good for women, or is it bad for women? Maybe it's both. I don't know, maybe it's neither. I don't know. Nobody knows. The question is so fucking vague and subjective that I'm honestly not sure why it even matters. This is another example, though, of what I mean by parochial thinking. These are people who have, like, they've built this little box, right? And anything that doesn't just fit neat, square into the box just fucking does not compute. Like, everything that they take in, they first have to funnel through this narrow set of politically charged abstractions. Now, to clarify, before I go any further, I should say that I'm absolutely not saying that a work of art can't have any kind of message or social commentary to it. Let's take, for example, Pan's Labyrinth. Really fucking good movie. Not a single fucking wasted moment. Just yes, mwah, delicious, pizza pie. It's really fucking good. And I bring it up specifically because it's also a clear moral parable. The moral is, think for yourself, don't just blindly obey. And now, that's a message that speaks to me personally because I believe that you should always question the motives or competence of people who try to tell you what to do or what to think. That's a major cornerstone of my beliefs. But I recognize that the movie is way more than just a vehicle for that message. The message elevates the film, not the other way around. And I'm not gonna just go watch Breaking Bad or something and be like, oh, but is it anti-authoritarian? Because that's just not what the show is about. That's not a fair or reasonable standard by which to judge every little piece of culture I consume. Or like, on a way different tack, I think of 50 Shades of Grey. So many people are like, oh, it's bad because it normalizes abuse. And I mean, yeah, if this happened in real life, it'd be like, what the fuck? But ultimately it is just a fantasy, right? Like, I fucking love Hotline Miami, but I don't like guns or violence or death in real life. I don't like hurting other people, and that's never going to change.
Don't you ever do this.
But I do like to explore these things in the context of fantasy expressly because it's disconnected from reality. It's, I don't know, it's fun and cathartic. Big fucking deal. You might think that 50 Shades of Grey is stupid and distasteful. Fine. Don't read it. I'm never gonna read it. But all I'm saying is I just question the wisdom of casting moral judgment on a work of fiction, especially one that is billed as pure fantasy. Or, for another example of what I'm talking about, let's take this very reasonable man who says that Smash Brothers carries a toxic message that violence solves conflicts. Okay? Seems like a totally sane observation to make. He also apparently didn't like Mad Max Fury Road because it wasn't feminist enough, and it's wrong to make a fictional post-apocalypse seem cool and exciting. I mean, I don't know. I don't like to rag on individual people, but this guy needs to relax. I don't know. I guess this is what happens though when you refuse to see context beyond the scope of your political narrative. Shit gets weird. See? Integrative complexity. It fucking matters. I knew I'd shoehorn that in somehow. But yeah. To me, and again, maybe I'm just fucking stupid, but to me it seems like critiques like these are sort of blind to the context of the thing that they're talking about. They're not really giving honest consideration to things like sort of the creator's intentions or the context of genre or just sort of like what most normal people consuming the work are really going to be getting out of it. Instead, it's always just a question of how does this thing fit into my ideology? How does this help to prove this point that I want to make, right? You know, like, how does this work help to program people with the correct moral values? And to me, that seems like a fundamental misunderstanding of what art really sort of is. And don't get me wrong, I think it's okay to look at pop culture through that sort of critical or moral lens. I mean, like, what does it say about me that I like Hotline Miami, right? What does it say about all of us that we can find pleasure in images of brutal violence and carnage? You know, what does it say about our culture or our nature as human beings? What is this darkness inside of us, man? That's a good conversation to have, but I just think it's better to approach questions like that with an open mind rather than as part of some ideologically driven campaign, or to rain down condemnation on people who enjoy things that we happen to find distasteful. I don't know. Just my 2 cents.
I follow up, bang, bang, bang. Don't you ever do this.
Part 4. This part may make you feel unsafe. I was reading in the news not too long ago about this thing that happened at Brown University. The school held a debate about campus sexual assault, right? And hey, fair enough. Now, what made this event remarkable and newsworthy was that in advance of this, a group of students set up what they called a safe space for anyone who was made uncomfortable by the debate. The safe space, this is what they had. According to the New York Times, it was a room set aside which had cookies, coloring books, bubbles, Play-Doh, calming music, pillows, blankets, and a video of frolicking puppies. Okay, so what the fuck? Here's an actual quote from one of the students who helped put this together. She went to the lecture hall for a little bit and then she went back and here's what she said, and I quote: I was feeling bombarded by a lot of viewpoints that really go against my dearly and closely held beliefs.
Oh man! Oh God! Oh man! Oh God! Oh man! Oh God! Oh man! Oh God!
I read about shit like this all the time now, though. Like, there was the University of Michigan that they were gonna show American Sniper, and then a whole bunch of students flipped out, and it actually got pulled. Like, what is that? Like, oh, this movie goes against my values, so I don't want anybody to see it. I don't know. I don't get that mindset. There's a University of Iowa where someone put up a sculpture in the shape of a KKK member, and it was made up of newspaper articles about instances of racial violence. It was an anti-racist piece, but students bitched about it anyway, and they had it removed. There's this thing I saw in the New Yorker back in December, written by a professor at Harvard Law, where she just kind of, ruminates about how it's been a hassle teaching rape law because so many students just don't want to hear it, and they whine about being triggered. I mean, and rape and PTSD are serious fucking business. Nobody's going to argue with that, but this is Harvard Law. Whatever, I don't know. I can list off shit like this all day. I'm just saying, what we're seeing here is how people with this particular belief set try to live in denial of stuff that doesn't fit into their little ideologically gilded comfort zone. We're back to the word of the day again, parochialism. People like this live in a little snow globe. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to be made uncomfortable. They just want to make it all go away. And I think that's a big mistake. I don't think it's a good thing to walk through life like this with your hands over your eyes, trying to hide from everything that makes you uncomfortable, or even things that hurt you very deeply. I've said this before, but pain is a part of life. You should embrace it. It makes you stronger, makes you wiser, helps you grow as a human being. I'm going to be a little ridiculous here, but like, how many medicines are essentially just little doses of poison, right? When you get a vaccine, what is that? You're getting stuck with a little simulacrum of disease. And that little microbe, that little prick of the needle, makes your immune system stronger. Could save your life down the road. Pain's the same way. You know what I mean? Don't be so afraid of it. You'll be much better off in the end. Part 5. And this is a question that I often find myself asking when I am on Tumblr, and that is, why? Why? So, why? Why are we here? Where did this movement come from? Well, to start, people who are like this have been around for a very long time. There are people who will be social justice warriors no matter what, but they tend to surge following periods of social upheaval. There was a surge in the late 60s, there was a surge in the early 90s, and we're going through another surge now. It's been going on since, I don't know, I want to say like 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. And I think that what we're seeing here is one small ripple in the aftermath of the big splash that was made by the financial crisis in 2008. And now you're probably sitting there like, oh, what the fuck are you talking about? JT, quit talking out your ass and just end this video already. And I am talking out my ass, but just hear me out. See, this was an event with a lot of social impact, right? It is, for example, what catalyzed the birth of both the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street. People knew they got fucked. They didn't know how, and they didn't know why, but they knew they got fucked, and it radicalized them. Crisis radicalizes people. I mean, I hate to bring up John McIntosh again, but he even flat out stated in a recent tweet that that witnessing 9/11 when he was a kid traumatized him and made him into who he is today. They've shown in studies that traumatic events and sort of like wide-reaching social crises can actually reduce integrative complexity on a large scale. They've specifically looked at the impact of war, international tension, and economic decline. The financial crisis of 2008 is a great example. This was an event that sent waves all through the political and social landscape. And those waves are still washing over us even now. I'm only 25, but I can already kind of feel the sort of generational shift that's come with this. I can see what it's done to people. And the thing is, like, these social justice warrior types, I know, they're like, most of them are like kids, like they're 15-year-olds on their iPhones, like, I gotta talk about how problematic Steven Universe is, or they're like 20-year-old sociology majors, kids in college, they're young. This is the world that they grew up in. A world where the whole economy can just suddenly implode with no fucking clear rhyme, reason, or accountability. And I just wonder, like, what has this taught them? Who do we expect them to trust? You know what I mean? Like, how can you face something like that and grow up in a world where that's normal and not just feel like a loose fucking napkin being blown along by the wind? And this is also part of the reason why more generally, why I feel like the United States is actually going through a little bit of a crisis of authority right now. It does weird things to people when they feel like they have no real control over their lives. When that happens, they will, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll look to seize on any opportunity for control or authority, even stuff that might seem very superficial. And rallying around a simplistic political narrative that tells you exactly who or what to blame for all of society's problems is one way of doing that, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, I'm totally talking out my ass. Oh my god, it's like 5 in the fucking morning right now. Vote Nader! Ron Paul's gonna make anime real! Anyway, let's fucking end this already. Holy shit.
Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Never would have imagined it, not even in her right mind. Practice in front of that mirror, now you doing it on the dance floor.
So what did we learn today? Honestly, probably not much. In retrospect, this has probably mostly just been a big circle jerk for people who think like me, which is kind of ironic given some of the points I made earlier. But I actually think that there are some contexts where social justice warriors actually get some stuff right. I think the same is true of most types of ideologues, regardless of their political stripe. The big mistake that extremists tend to make, though, is they take one little grain of truth or good idea and then magnify it out of all proportion and apply it in situations where it's not appropriate. The thing about political stuff is, it's, when you really get down to it, it's not really left, right, or whether it's like somewhere in the middle or which side is right or wrong. Most issues in reality are these huge, incredibly complicated webs of intermingling contexts and situations. And that's before you even factor in competing sets of moral values. So, if you view the whole world through the lens of one idea, like this notion of powerful identities versus less powerful identities, there's a lot of shit that's just gonna fly right by you. And even though you'll have the security of conviction, you're going to spend a lot of time fumbling around in the dark, angry and confused, wondering why so many people in the world are so stupid and evil. So, don't let that be you. Anyway, I'm done condescending now. Keep it real. See ya, Space Cowboy.
Don't you ever do this.